The Zakari hunting pack moved through the twisted metal corridors of the derelict space station with practiced silence. Their 4 arms held plasma rifles steady, while their compound eyes scanned every shadow and crevice. Each of the 6-foot-tall insectoid warriors had earned their place in the elite unit through countless successful raids across the Outer Rim territories. Commander Vex Ka clicked his mandibles in satisfaction as he studied the tactical display on his wrist scanner. The abandoned research station showed no life signs, no energy signatures, nothing that suggested danger. Intelligence reports indicated the facility had been evacuated months ago when the human colonies in this sector fell to their advance forces. "Easy pickings," he transmitted to his pack through their neural link. "Standard sweep and salvage. Watch for automated defenses, but expect nothing more challenging than a few maintenance drones." The pack spread out through the station's 3 levels, their movements coordinated like a deadly dance they had performed dozens of times before. Vex Ka had led successful raids on 17 human settlements in the past year alone. Humans were soft, predictable creatures who relied too heavily on their technology and crumbled when faced with superior Zakari tactics. Warrior Ketzu entered what appeared to be the main laboratory, his thermal sensors detecting the faint heat signatures of recently powered-down equipment. Banks of computers lined the walls, their screens dark, but their memory cores potentially valuable. He began connecting his data extraction device to the nearest terminal when a soft scraping sound made him freeze. His compound eyes swiveled independently, scanning the room while his primary vision remained focused on the computer. Nothing. He clicked his mandibles in annoyance. The pack had been operating in deep space for weeks, and the recycled air was making everyone jumpy. The scraping came again, barely audible above the hum of the station's minimal life support systems. This time, Ketzu was certain it came from the ventilation grate directly above him. He raised his plasma rifle with 2 arms while his other 2 continued working on the data extraction. "Commander," he transmitted. "Possible contact in Laboratory 7. Could be nothing but—" The transmission cut off as the ventilation grate crashed down, and something dropped into the room with liquid grace. Ketzu spun, finger already tightening on his weapon's trigger, but found himself staring at what appeared to be empty space. A human materialized 3 feet from him, as if stepping out of thin air. Not the pale, soft creatures they usually encountered in the settlements, but something else entirely. This human was lean and compact, wearing some kind of adaptive camouflage suit that had made him completely invisible. His face was painted with dark stripes, and his eyes held a cold calculation that made Ketzu's chitin crawl. Before the Zakari warrior could fire, the human moved with impossible speed. A blade materialized in his hand and swept across Ketzu's primary weapon arm in a single fluid motion. The plasma rifle clattered to the floor as green blood sprayed across the laboratory equipment. Ketzu opened his mandibles to scream a warning, but the human's other hand clamped over his mouth with crushing force. The blade found the soft joint between his head and thorax, sliding in with surgical precision. The Zakari warrior's compound eyes dimmed as his nervous system shut down. The human lowered the body silently to the floor, then picked up the dropped plasma rifle. He examined it briefly before setting it aside and pulling out a small device that looked like a modified tablet. His fingers moved across its surface with practiced efficiency. "Recon Agent Marcus Chen, serial number 7749 Alpha," he whispered into his throat mic. "Enemy contact confirmed. 6 Zakari raiders, standard hunting pack configuration, beginning elimination sequence." The device in his hands showed the station's layout with 6 red dots moving through the corridors. 1 dot had just gone dark. Marcus studied their patrol patterns for 30 seconds, then activated his suit's camouflage system and seemed to vanish again. On the upper level, warriors Sekra and Vithko were methodically searching the command center when Sekra's communication implant crackled with interference. He tapped it with one of his secondary arms. frowning at the strange static. "Vex-Ka, we have communication issues up here," he transmitted. Also, Ket-Zu stopped responding from Laboratory 7. "Investigating now," came the commander's reply. "Probably just interference from the old equipment. These human stations are notorious for electromagnetic leakage." Vithko had moved to the main computer terminal and was attempting to access the station's central database when the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing everything in a dim red glow that cast dancing shadows across the walls. "Power fluctuation," Sekra reported, switching to thermal vision. Both warriors activated their heat-sensing capabilities, but the thermal imaging revealed only their own body signatures and the gradually cooling equipment around them. What they couldn't see was Marcus Chen moving through the shadows behind them, his suit's thermal dampeners masking his heat signature completely. He had accessed the station's main power grid through his tablet and created the blackout as a distraction. Now he waited in the corner of the room, studying his targets through his helmet's enhanced vision systems. The Zakari were dangerous opponents in open combat, but they relied heavily on their technology and superior numbers. Alone and partially blinded, they became much more manageable. Vithko moved toward the emergency lighting controls, his plasma rifle sweeping back and forth nervously. As he passed within arm's reach of Marcus's position, the human struck. This time he used a different approach, wrapping his arm around the alien's neck in a sleeper hold while simultaneously driving his combat knife into the base of Vithko's skull. The Zakari warrior went limp instantly, but Sekra's superior hearing caught the soft sound of the body hitting the floor. He spun toward the noise, firing his plasma rifle in a wide arc. Superheated energy bolts lit up the command center, but struck only walls and equipment. "Contact! Human contact in the command center!" Sekra transmitted frantically. "Vithko is down, requesting immediate assistance." Marcus had already moved, rolling behind a bank of computers as plasma fire scorched the air where he had been standing. He pulled a small spherical device from his belt and rolled it across the floor toward Sekra's position. The Zakari warrior saw it coming and dove for cover, expecting an explosive. Instead, the device emitted a blinding flash and an ear-splitting sonic pulse designed specifically to overwhelm Zakari sensory organs. Sekra's compound eyes went white with overload, and his mandibles clicked uncontrollably as the sound wave disrupted his nervous system. Marcus rose from cover and put 2 rounds from his sidearm into the stunned alien's center mass. The bullets were specifically designed to penetrate Zakari chitin, and Sekra crumpled to the deck plates without another sound. Down in the lower levels, Commander Vex-Ka heard the transmission and felt his stomach drop. 2 of his warriors were dead, and somehow a single human had managed to eliminate them without triggering any of their motion sensors or thermal alarms. "All warriors, converge on the command center," he ordered. "Full combat formation. We are dealing with something more than a standard colonist." Warriors Pekta and Morvik acknowledged the order and began moving upward through the station's central shaft. Both were veterans of dozens of successful raids, but they found themselves checking shadows and corners with unusual caution. The idea that a lone human could pose a serious threat to their pack went against everything they had learned about the species. Marcus watched their approach through the station's internal sensors, which he had accessed through his tablet. The 2 remaining warriors were moving together, weapons ready, communicating through hand signals rather than their neural link. They had learned from their packmates' deaths and were taking no chances. He activated another section of his tablet and began uploading a virus into the station's life support systems. It wouldn't cause any immediate damage, but it would give him additional options if the situation escalated further. The sound of metal on metal echoed through the corridors as Pekta and Morvik climbed toward the command center. Marcus had disabled the elevator systems, forcing them to use maintenance ladders. The narrow shaft would limit their mobility and force them to climb single file, presenting opportunities for ambush. He moved through the ventilation system with practiced ease, his enhanced suit allowing him to navigate the tight spaces that would be impossible for the larger Zakari. Years of training in hostile environments had taught him to use every advantage his smaller size provided. Pekta reached the upper level first, his plasma rifle trained on the ladder opening as Morvik climbed behind him. The command center was silent except for the hum of emergency power systems. Red warning lights cast eerie shadows across the walls where his packmates had died. Heat signatures on the bodies, Pekta reported quietly. They have been dead for less than 10 minutes. The human is still close. As if summoned by his words, a new sound echoed through the station, the deep rumble of the main reactor cycling up to full power. Both warriors looked at each other in confusion. The station had been running on minimal power since their arrival. He is accessing the station's systems, Morvik realized. Somehow this human has technical capabilities we were not briefed about. The lights came back on suddenly, full brightness flooding the command center and temporarily overwhelming their vision. In that moment of blindness, Marcus struck again. He had been waiting in the ventilation system directly above the ladder access, and he dropped down behind Morvik as the warrior was still adjusting to the light. This time he used a different weapon, a collapsible staff that extended to full length with a sharp click. The weighted end struck Morvik in the back of the head with enough force to crack chitin, and the Zakari warrior pitched forward into the ladder shaft. Pekta heard his packmate fall and spun around. But Marcus was already moving. The human rolled across the floor, came up behind a computer terminal, and fired his sidearm through a gap in the equipment. The bullet took Pekta in the shoulder, spinning him around and causing his return fire to go wide. "Commander, I am pinned down in the access shaft," Pekta transmitted. "The human is using the station systems against us. He has tactical advantages we cannot overcome." Vexkov felt something he had not experienced in years of combat: uncertainty. His elite hunting pack was being systematically eliminated by a single human who seemed to anticipate their every move. This was not the soft, panicking colonist they had expected to find. "Abort extraction," he decided. "Return to the ship. We will request heavy support and return with a full battle group." But as he turned to leave through the docking bay where their ship waited, he found his path blocked. The human stood between him and the exit, having somehow moved through the station faster than seemed possible. Up close, Vexka could see that this was no ordinary colonist. The human's equipment was military grade, his movements precise and economical. His eyes held the cold professionalism of someone who killed for a living. This was what the humans called a soldier, and Vexka realized with growing horror that he had led his pack into a trap. "You made a mistake coming here," Marcus said quietly, his weapon trained on the Zakari commander. "This station is under human protection. You are trespassing in claimed territory." "Impossible." Vexka clicked his mandibles. "This sector was cleared months ago. No human forces remain in this region." "Just me," Marcus replied. "But that seems to be enough." The Zakari commander raised his plasma rifle, but Marcus was already moving. Years of training against alien opponents had taught him exactly how to fight creatures like Vexka. He knew their reach, their reaction times, their weaknesses. The engagement lasted less than 30 seconds. When it was over, Marcus stood alone in the docking bay, checking his equipment methodically. 6 red dots on his tactical display had gone dark. He activated his long-range communicator and sent a burst transmission toward the inner colonies. "Recon Agent Chen reporting. Zakari hunting pack eliminated. Station secure. Recommend increased patrols in Sector 7. They are testing our defenses." As he waited for a response, Marcus began the grim task of moving the alien bodies. Intelligence would want to examine their equipment and gather data on current Zakari tactics. Every piece of information could save human lives in future encounters. The war between humans and the Zekari Empire had been raging for 3 years, and both sides had learned to respect each other's capabilities. But today, 6 elite alien warriors had discovered something that would soon spread throughout their fleet. Humans were not the soft prey they appeared to be. Some humans were predators. Supreme Admiral Keth Vara of the Zekari Third Fleet stared at the tactical display with growing disbelief. The holographic projection showed the last known positions of Hunting Pack Epsilon, all 6 signals terminating at the abandoned human research station designated Target Zulu 7. "Explain this to me again," she demanded, her 4 arms gesturing at the display. "An entire elite pack, warriors who have successfully raided 17 human settlements, simply vanished?" Intelligence Officer Nex Quo shifted uncomfortably under his commander's gaze. The spindly Zekari had been analyzing the mission data for 6 hours, and his conclusions challenged everything they thought they knew about human defensive capabilities. "The pack's final transmissions indicate contact with a single human," Nex Quo reported. "Initial assessment suggested minimal threat. The target was described as alone and lightly armed." "And yet 6 of our finest warriors are dead," Admiral Keth Vara clicked her mandibles in frustration. "How is this possible? Human colonists flee at the first sight of our raiders. They have no combat capability." "That is what we believed, Admiral, but analysis of the transmission fragments suggests this was not a colonist. The human appeared to have military-grade equipment and advanced tactical knowledge." The Admiral's compound eyes focused on her intelligence officer with laser intensity. "You are suggesting that humans have been deploying military forces in sectors we believe to be cleared?" "It is the only logical conclusion. This human demonstrated capabilities far beyond anything we have encountered in civilian populations. He eliminated our warriors using stealth, technical infiltration, and what appears to be extensive knowledge of Zekari anatomy and tactics." Admiral Keth Vara began pacing the bridge of her flagship, her clawed feet clicking against the metal deck plates. The Third Fleet had been systematically clearing human territories for 18 months, encountering only token resistance from poorly equipped colonial militias. The idea that humans had been secretly deploying special forces changed everything. "What do we know about human military organization?" she asked. Nex Quo activated his personal data tablet and pulled up a series of files. "Our intelligence on human military structure is limited. We know they have what they call armed forces, but most of our encounters have been with local defense units. These appear to be hastily trained civilians with basic weapons. But this suggests something different, something more dangerous." "Yes, Admiral. Analysis of the tactical pattern suggests this human was specifically trained to fight Zekari forces. He knew exactly how to disable our equipment, blind our sensors, and exploit our physiological vulnerabilities." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. If humans had been studying Zekari combat capabilities and developing countermeasures, the entire invasion strategy would need to be reconsidered. "I want a full battle group prepared for reconnaissance," Admiral Keth Vara ordered. 3 heavy cruisers, full fighter escort, and our best assault teams. We will investigate this station and determine exactly what kind of human forces we are dealing with." Meanwhile, Marcus Chen was 3 star systems away, aboard the stealth reconnaissance vessel Shadowrunner. The ship was barely larger than a fighter, but packed with advanced sensor equipment and communication arrays that kept it connected to Human Defense Command. Captain Sarah Mitchell reviewed his mission report with interest. The lean woman had commanded special operations for 5 years, and she understood the strategic implications of Marcus's encounter better than most. 6 Zekari elites with a single engagement, she mused. That is going to get their attention. Marcus nodded as he cleaned his equipment at the small maintenance station. They were overconfident, treated it like a standard raid against soft targets, but they will adapt quickly once word spreads through their fleet. Good. That was the point. Captain Mitchell activated the ship's holographic display, showing a three-dimensional map of the border territories. Red markers indicated confirmed Zekari positions, while blue markers showed human defensive installations. Intelligence believes the Zekari have been testing our perimeter defenses for weeks. Small raids, probing attacks, gathering data on our response capabilities. And now they know we have assets they were not expecting. Exactly. Your mission was not just to eliminate that hunting pack, it was to send a message. She highlighted several systems on the display. We have been placing recon agents throughout the border regions for 6 months. Every major Zekari target now has at least one operative in position. Marcus studied the map with professional interest. How many agents do we have deployed? 47 active operatives across 23 systems, each one trained specifically for anti-Zekari operations. You have all studied their tactics, their equipment, their biology. When they come expecting easy targets, they will find predators waiting for them. The strategy was elegant in its simplicity. Rather than meeting the Zekari advance with traditional fleet actions, Human Defense Command had chosen to make every raid a potential disaster for the aliens. Each hunting pack that ventured into human territory would face the possibility of running into specially trained killers who knew exactly how to exploit their weaknesses. "What is our next assignment?" Marcus asked. Captain Mitchell highlighted a system near the edge of Zekari space. Long-range reconnaissance. Intelligence suggests they are massing forces for a major offensive. We need eyes on their staging areas. The Shadow Runner began its journey toward enemy territory, its advanced stealth systems keeping it invisible to Zekari sensors. Marcus spent the transit time reviewing intelligence files on his next target zone, studying patrol patterns and defensive installations. Back in Zekari space, Admiral Keth Vara's battle group had arrived at the research station where Hunting Pack Epsilon met its end. 3 heavy cruisers held position while fighters swept the surrounding area for any signs of human presence. Assault Commander Vok Resh led a full company of warriors through the station, following the same route that the hunting pack had taken days earlier. But this time, they found only empty corridors and the carefully arranged bodies of their comrades. "Forensic analysis confirms the intelligence report," Vok Resh transmitted to the flagship. "Single human operative, extremely skilled. Used a combination of stealth technology, technical infiltration, and close-quarters combat to eliminate the entire pack." Admiral Keth Vara studied the tactical breakdown from her command chair. The human had demonstrated capabilities that should have been impossible for a lone operative. He had accessed the station's computer systems, manipulated the power grid, and moved through the structure without triggering any of the advanced sensors that Zekari equipment relied on. "How did he remain undetected?" she asked. "Unknown, Admiral. Analysis suggests some form of adaptive camouflage combined with thermal dampening technology. Our equipment could not track him until he chose to reveal himself." "And his weapons?" "Mixture of energy weapons, projectile weapons, and close combat implements. All specifically designed to penetrate Zekari armor and target our physiological weak points." The Admiral felt a chill run down her exoskeleton. The humans had not only been studying Zekari forces, they had been developing specialized equipment to kill them. This was not the desperate improvisation of a defeated species. This was the calculated preparation of a military force that intended to fight and win. "Prepare a fleet-wide intelligence briefing," she ordered. "All hunting packs are to be warned that human territories may contain hostile special forces. Standard raiding protocols are suspended until further notice." The order rippled through the Third Fleet within hours, then spread to other battle groups throughout the Zekari advance forces. What had begun as a routine raid on an abandoned station had suddenly become a major shift in tactical doctrine. On the border world of New Geneva, Recon Agent David Park received the intelligence update through his encrypted communication link. The former Marine had been embedded in the ruins of the planetary capital for 3 weeks, watching Zekari patrol patterns and mapping their supply routes. The news about Marcus's successful engagement brought a cold smile to his face. David had been hoping for an opportunity to test his own skills against the aliens, and it appeared that opportunity was coming sooner than expected. His sensors detected movement in the ruins below his hidden observation post. A Zekari patrol was moving through the abandoned streets, 12 warriors in full combat gear. But their formation was different from the standard patterns he had observed before. They moved more cautiously, checked corners more thoroughly, and maintained constant communication with their command ship in orbit. "They are learning," David whispered into his throat mic. "Updating tactics based on new threat assessment. Recommend acceleration of Operation Scarecrow." Operation Scarecrow was the code name for the systematic harassment of Zekari forces throughout human territory. Rather than waiting for the aliens to discover recon agents through their normal raiding activities, Human Defense Command had decided to begin actively hunting the hunters. Agent Lisa Zhang crouched in the ventilation system of a Zekari supply depot on the moon of Titan 7. The facility was lightly defended, considered a safe rear area installation by the alien command structure. That assumption was about to prove fatal. Lisa had been observing the depot for 72 hours, learning the guard rotations and identifying key structural weak points. The facility stored ammunition and equipment for 3 hunting packs, making it a high-value target for sabotage. She activated the timer on her demolition charges and began moving toward the exit. The explosions would destroy millions of credits worth of Zekari military equipment and leave their forward units critically short of supplies. More importantly, it would send another message: nowhere in human space was safe for the invaders. The charges detonated as Lisa reached minimum safe distance, lighting up the lunar landscape with massive fireballs. Zekari reinforcements would arrive within hours, but they would find only wreckage and another mystery to report to their commanders. Similar operations were taking place across dozens of star systems. Recon agents emerged from hiding to strike at Zekari supply lines, communication arrays, and isolated outposts. Each attack was precisely planned and executed with the kind of professional skill that the aliens had not encountered before. Admiral Keth Vara found herself dealing with reports of human special forces activity from throughout her operational area. The pattern was clear and terrifying. Humans had been preparing for this war far longer than anyone had realized. "They have been watching us," she admitted to her senior staff during an emergency briefing, "studying our tactics, learning our weaknesses, positioning their forces for maximum effect." "How many of these human operatives could there be?" asked Fleet Captain Rex Moore. "Unknown, but assume every system in human space contains at least one. We can no longer treat their territory as conquered. It is hostile territory, filled with an unknown number of specially trained killers." The psychological effect was perhaps even more important than the tactical one. Zekari warriors who had grown accustomed to easy victories against helpless colonists now found themselves looking over their shoulders constantly, wondering if death was watching them from the shadows. Huntmaster Pek Zhao led his pack through the ruins of a human mining colony, but their usual confidence was gone. Every shadow could hide an enemy. Every sound could be the approach of a human predator. The casual brutality that had characterized their previous raids gave way to nervous vigilance. "Maintain formation," he transmitted to his warriors. "Check every corner. Assume hostile presence until proven otherwise." But the human they were hunting was already behind them. Having followed their ship down from orbit and infiltrated their landing zone while they were still unloading equipment. Agent Michael Torres had been waiting for this particular pack for 5 days, and he had prepared the colony ruins like a killing ground. Remote explosives were positioned at key choke points. Motion sensors provided early warning of enemy movement. Sniper positions offered clear fields of fire across multiple approach routes. When the Zakari finally walked into his trap, the engagement would be over in minutes. The psychological warfare was working exactly as Human Defense Command had planned. The Zakari Empire's greatest advantage had always been their ability to project overwhelming force against unprepared targets. But when every target became a potential ambush, when every raid risked encountering specialized killers, that advantage disappeared. Fear was spreading through the Zakari fleet like a virus, transmitted through combat reports and intelligence briefings. The humans were no longer helpless prey. They had become something far more dangerous, organized resistance that struck from darkness and vanished before retaliation was possible. Admiral Keth Vara knew that her forces were facing a fundamental change in the nature of the war. The easy conquests were over. From now on, every operation into human space would be a battle against an enemy that understood them better than they understood themselves. The hunt had become a war. 6 months after the incident at Research Station Zulu 7, the Zakari 3rd Fleet had lost 47 hunting packs to human special forces. What had begun as routine raids into conquered territory had become a nightmare of ambushes, sabotage, and psychological warfare that was crippling their advance operations. Supreme Admiral Keth Vara stood before the War Council of the Zakari Empire, her reputation in ruins and her fleet demoralized. The holographic displays around the chamber showed the devastating statistics: supply convoys destroyed, communication networks disrupted, and most critically, the complete loss of initiative in human border regions. Explain to us how a single species of prey animals has managed to halt the advance of our most elite forces, demanded High Counselor Zek Thara, his mandibles clicking with barely contained rage. Admiral Keth Vara activated her tactical display, showing the current deployment of human special forces as understood by Zakari intelligence. Red markers indicated confirmed operative positions, while yellow markers showed suspected activity. The map was covered in warning symbols. The humans did not simply resist our invasion, she reported. They prepared for it. While we were planning our assault on their outer colonies, they were studying our tactics, learning our biology, and positioning specialized killers throughout the territory we intended to conquer. Impossible, snorted War Marshal Voth Cree. Our intelligence indicated that human military forces were primitive and disorganized. How could they have implemented such an extensive covert operation? Because we underestimated them completely. The Admiral's voice carried the bitter weight of hard-earned knowledge. These humans are not the same species we encountered in our initial contact scenarios. They are apex predators who have learned to hunt us with the same efficiency we once used against them. The War Council shifted uncomfortably as the implications sank in. The Zakari Empire had built its expansion strategy on the principle of overwhelming force against technologically inferior species. The idea that humans had not only adapted to their presence, but had actually turned the tables, was almost incomprehensible. High Counselor Zek Thara examined the tactical reports with growing alarm. These human operatives, what are their capabilities? They appear to be specially trained soldiers with equipment specifically designed for anti-Zakari operations. They demonstrate extensive knowledge of our physiology, our tactics, and our technology. More disturbing, they show signs of psychological conditioning that makes them extremely effective killers. Admiral Keth Vara highlighted several recent engagement reports on her display. In the past month alone, they have eliminated hunting packs on Koreth 5, destroyed our supply depot on Valen Prime, and assassinated intelligence coordinator Hexmock while he was aboard his own flagship. The council chamber fell silent as they absorbed the magnitude of the threat. The assassination of a fleet coordinator aboard a heavily defended capital ship represented a level of human capability that challenged their basic understanding of the species. Meanwhile, deep in human space, The man responsible for that particular operation was preparing for his next mission. Agent Marcus Chen had spent 3 weeks infiltrating the Zekari command structure, posing as a maintenance drone using advanced holographic disguise technology. The intelligence gathered during his time aboard enemy vessels had revealed the true scope of Zekari invasion plans. They were not simply seeking to conquer human colonies. They intended to eliminate the species entirely and use human worlds as breeding grounds for their expanding population. Target analysis complete, Marcus reported to command through his encrypted link. Zekari War Council is meeting on their homeworld of Kethzar. Security will be maximum, but if we can eliminate their senior leadership, it could cripple their entire war effort. General Patricia Hayes, commander of Human Special Operations, studied the intelligence report from her headquarters on Earth. The idea of striking at the heart of the Zekari Empire was ambitious to the point of seeming impossible, but the strategic value would be immense. "How many operatives would you need?" she asked. "Just me," Marcus replied. "This is a stealth operation. Too many people would increase the chances of detection." "Negative. Even you cannot infiltrate the most heavily defended world in Zekari space. We will need a different approach." But Marcus had already been thinking about that problem. What if we do not infiltrate? What if we make them come to us? The plan he outlined was audacious even by special operations standards. Rather than attempting to penetrate Zekari defenses, they would create a situation that would force the aliens to venture into human-controlled space, where the environmental advantages would favor human forces. Agent David Park received his mission briefing while hidden in the ruins of New Geneva. His orders were simple but terrifying. Capture a high-ranking Zekari officer and extract information about their homeworld defenses. Intelligence suggests that Admiral Kethvara herself will be leading a reconnaissance mission to assess human special forces capabilities, General Hayes explained through the secure link. She will have minimal escort to avoid detection. This is our opportunity. David studied the projected flight path of the Admiral's stealth ship. She would be passing through the outer system of New Geneva in 72 hours, close enough to the planet to be within range of his equipment, but far enough out to avoid most sensor networks. Understood. What are the extraction requirements? Full intelligence download and psychological assessment. We need to understand not just their military capabilities, but their decision-making process and their psychological weaknesses. The mission would require David to not only capture one of the most important Zekari commanders, but to do so in space, using nothing but a modified fighter craft and his own skills. It was the kind of operation that would have been considered impossible 6 months earlier. But 6 months of hunting Zekari forces had taught human operatives that impossible was just another word for difficult. Admiral Kethvara's stealth ship glided through the outer system of New Geneva, her sensors probing for any signs of human special forces activity. The intelligence mission was risky, but she needed to understand how the humans had achieved such devastating tactical success. Her ship was a masterpiece of Zekari technology, nearly invisible to most detection systems, heavily armed despite its small size, and equipped with the most advanced sensors in the fleet. She had brought only a minimal crew of 3 specialists, all volunteers who understood the importance of gathering intelligence on human capabilities. What she did not know was that David Park had been tracking her ship since it entered the system. Using passive sensors that detected the subtle gravitational distortions created by her stealth drive. Human scientists had spent months studying captured Zekari technology, learning to recognize and counter their advantages. "Contact acquired," David whispered into his throat mic. "Beginning intercept approach." His fighter was running completely silent, using minimal thrust and no active sensors. The craft had been specially modified for this mission, equipped with boarding claws and a small airlock that would allow him to transfer between ships in space. The approach took 3 hours of careful maneuvering, matching velocity and closing distance without triggering any alarms. David had practiced this maneuver hundreds of times in simulation, but the real thing required nerves of steel and absolute precision. When he was close enough to touch the Zekari ship's hull, he activated his magnetic clamps and began cutting through the armor plating with a molecular disruptor. The tool made no sound and left no energy signature, slicing through advanced alien alloys as if they were paper. Admiral Keth Vara was reviewing sensor data when her ship's internal atmosphere alarm activated. Someone had breached the hull. Impossible, she thought. No one could have approached without detection. She reached for her sidearm just as David Park dropped through the hole he had cut in the ceiling. The human was already moving as he fell, his weapon trained on her before his feet hit the deck. "Admiral Keth Vara," he said calmly, "I need you to order your crew to stand down." The alien commander stared at him in shock. A human had somehow boarded her ship in the middle of space, bypassed all her security systems, and was now holding her at gunpoint in her own command center. It defied everything she knew about human technological capabilities. "How?" was all she managed to say. "We learned from you," David replied. "Every raid you conducted, every piece of equipment you left behind, every tactical report you filed, we studied it all and used it to become better predators than you ever imagined." The extraction took 4 hours. David's ship was equipped with interrogation equipment that could interface directly with Zekari neural implants, downloading not just information, but actual memories and thought patterns. By the time he was finished, human intelligence had a complete picture of Zekari military doctrine, their strategic plans, and most importantly, their psychological weaknesses. Admiral Keth Vara found herself returned to her own ship with no memory of the encounter, but with subtle psychological programming that would make her increasingly cautious and paranoid in future operations. She would return to the Zekari fleet as an unknowing agent of human psychological warfare. The information extracted from her mind revealed the true scope of the threat facing humanity. The Zekari Empire commanded thousands of worlds and trillions of warriors. Their technology was centuries ahead of human science in many areas. Under normal circumstances, humanity would have been conquered within months. But these were not normal circumstances. The humans had done something that no other species in Zekari history had managed. They had adapted faster than their conquerors. General Hayes reviewed the intelligence data with growing satisfaction. "They are afraid," she concluded. "For the first time in their expansion history, the Zekari are facing an enemy that makes them question their own superiority." "What are our next orders?" Marcus asked from his position near the edge of Zekari space. "We escalate. Operation Nightmare is approved for immediate implementation." Operation Nightmare was the culmination of 6 months of psychological warfare. Human Special Forces would begin targeting not just military assets, but the psychological foundations of Zekari society itself. Fear would become their weapon, and terror would become their strategy. Agent teams began infiltrating Zekari civilian populations, spreading rumors of human capabilities that were carefully designed to cause maximum psychological impact. Stories of humans who could become invisible, who could survive in hard vacuum, who could kill with a touch, began circulating through alien communication networks. The beauty of the operation was that most of the stories were true. Human Special Forces had developed capabilities that seemed impossible to alien understanding. When Zekari warriors reported encounters with invisible predators or humans who seemed to anticipate their every move, the reports were dismissed as combat stress until the pattern became undeniable. Within 3 months, Zekari recruitment centers were reporting significant shortages as potential warriors chose to avoid military service rather than face the human threat. Supply lines became increasingly unreliable as crews refused missions into human space. Even their elite units began requesting transfers to other sectors. Admiral Keth Vara found herself commanding a fleet that was slowly disintegrating due to fear of an enemy they outnumbered by millions to one. The psychological programming implanted during her capture was working perfectly, making her increasingly paranoid and ineffective as a commander. "Perhaps we should reconsider our expansion into human territory," she suggested during a fleet briefing. "The cost in resources and personnel may not be justified by the potential gains." War Marshal Voth Kree glared at her with barely contained contempt. "You are allowing primitive humans to intimidate the greatest military force in the galaxy. This is unacceptable." "With respect, Marshal. These humans are far from primitive. They have demonstrated technological and tactical capabilities that exceed our own in several key areas. Continuing this campaign may result in losses that could take decades to replace." The argument that followed would have been unthinkable 6 months earlier. The idea that humans could pose a serious threat to Zakari expansion was becoming accepted fact throughout their military hierarchy. Back in human space, Marcus Chen was preparing for what might be his final mission. Intelligence had identified the location of the Zakari breeding worlds, massive planet-sized installations where they raised their young and stored genetic material for their entire species. "This is not about winning the war anymore," General Hayes explained. "This is about ensuring they never forget the cost of threatening humanity. We are going to make them understand that there are consequences for attempting genocide." The mission would require Marcus to penetrate the most heavily defended installations in Zakari space and plant a virus in their genetic databases. Not to destroy them, but to ensure that every Zakari born in the next 1,000 years would carry cellular-level memories of human capabilities. It was psychological warfare on a species-wide scale, designed to make future generations of Zakari instinctively fear and respect human presence. When they looked at the stars, they would remember that somewhere in the darkness, human predators were watching. The war was not over, but its nature had fundamentally changed. The Zakari had come expecting easy conquest and found themselves trapped in a nightmare of their own making. They had awakened something in humanity that would haunt them for generations to come. In the end, they learned the truth that Marcus had tried to explain to their first hunting pack. Some humans were predators, and predators never forgot their prey.